And I'm just so happy to see so many faces from around the world gathered today. It's always very exciting. And because there are a number of new faces around the screen, I'm going to just spend a little bit of time telling you about what the Pass It On Network is. It's an opportunity that I can't miss. So the Pass It On Network, or it's often called PION, P-I-O-N for those names, welcomes you very warmly. We were two of us who founded or co-founded our network. One is Dr. Jan Hively. Jan, please wave to everybody. And myself, Moira Allen. I was born in South Africa and I'm living in France. Jan is our Wisdom Council. And we have a very active, motivated team of volunteers who help run our organization, which is a not-for-profit organization. We have pioneers, and we love this word play because PION stands for our network, and pioneers is something that describes each and every one of us, because we are all pioneering basically a new stage and a new way of regarding aging. We have pioneers like yourselves in 60 different countries around the world, and they all have their own associations or networks or organizations, so that they rayon and they send out information that they come to us and glean. We very much focused on what we can learn from each other, the experiences that we can pick up from other countries, and maybe just confirm them to what we're doing here. So one of the very exciting things that we've done this year is I must just tell you something very quickly, that the Pass It On Network has its own website. We have these monthly online conversations that are called 50-50, which aim to give you a chance to speak. We have a gazette, which is our newsletter, and we'd be delighted if you joined our newsletter. We do have a website, and you just have to put in www.passitonnetwork.org. All of that is in one. So as I was saying, this is our 10th anniversary year, and we've been very, very busy. And the highlight of that year was our visit to New York. And that was to attend the 13th session of the open-ended working group on aging. And I'm very happy to tell you that things have been moving in that direction. And there has been activity, very positive activity, since the meeting in April in New York. And that has been organized by the intersessional committee. But I'm going to invite right now Margaret Young, who is the chairperson of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People, and also our pioneer in Canada. Margaret, won't you please just bring us up as to why this was such an important thing that happened on the 13th session?
Thank you. Absolutely. I'll make it probably a shorter comment, so that, and because we're going to talk more about it in the July Gazette. So in the 13th session, there was a core group of country who's very much supportive of moving forward on looking at an international instrument for the human rights of older people. So that core group of country put to the table the idea of gathering input from April or this summer from NGOs, older people, national human rights institution on different aspects about human rights, so that we have more evidence to put forward, and then to make recommendations on what are the next steps. Is it like start drafting a convention? Is it putting some mechanism into place? So lots of exciting opportunity, I think, especially for us as individuals or organization to participate and get involved. There is a couple of avenues to do that from this particular work. One is a questionnaire that has been published calling for input, and then we'll put more information about that in the July Gazette for us to participate. We really welcome and need your input on that. The second is actually there'll be briefings provided by, actually the first summit is actually this coming Wednesday, on Wednesday. And this particular one briefing is by the independent expert on the human rights of older people and treaty bodies. So they'll be talking about sort of the current gaps in protection, as well as some potentially some options. So if anyone's interested in attending the briefing, I would encourage that as a member of Pass It On Network, because Pass It On Network is an accredited organization through the process. So we would really welcome and wish to have, you know, our diversity to be at the table. So if anyone is interested in attending, it's actually 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I can't get that into Paris time and all the other time zones. But anyways, please put a note into the chat, and I'll pick up your name, and I'll make sure you get access this coming Wednesday. And then for the other information, I'll put it into the Gazette so that we can all kind of take a look and go from there. And I'll also put my email into the chat box in case anyone wants to reach out meanwhile. Back over to you, Maura.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Margaret. That was perfect, just to give us the link into what's going on. And we're very, very pleased to see, especially to see that Nigeria occupies the African chair on the Intersessionary Committee to make sure that Africa's voice is heard. And this brings me to our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Emem Omokaro, who's worked on the open-ended working group on aging almost since its inception in 2010. Today, she is the first Director General of Nigeria's Senior Citizen Center, charged to roll out the country's avant-garde policy on aging. You'll find some notes about her background in the chat. And I'd just like to mention that I first learned about Emem through our pioneer in Lagos, David Oludari-Mark, who runs the Family Arc Mission. It was way back in 2016, and I actually went to Nigeria. It was the most wonderful experience for me. Since then, the Pass It On Network has been a keen observer of Emem Omokaro's actions. And what we like most about Emem Omokaro is her consistency, her drive, and her communications skills. Since her award-winning dissertation on the quality of care in Nigeria's older persons, she's devoted her energy to improving that quality and make sure that it's best it can be. Her actions are always collaborative and strike at the roots of the fundamental issues, like, for example, training people in the aging field. She tackled this issue by building a relationship with the United Nations International Institute on Aging in Malta. And this resulted in a joint venture between the Institute and her David Omokaro Foundation, and in the creation of the Institute's first satellite training center on the African continent in Abuja. And I could go on because I'm really very admirative of Emem Omokaro, and she's done some outstanding things already in the short tenure that she has as Director General of this Senior Centers thing. But Emem is here to talk to you, not me. So I'd like to hand over to Emem, give you the floor, Emem. I'm not sure if you're wanting to share some slides, but Osnat is there to help us. So please do go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for that generous introduction. I am really highly honored to be invited to give this keynote at today's Global Pioneers 50/50 online conversation. I really want to thank the co-founders and the entire Pass It On Network family for building this peer review learning network and sustaining positive conversations on aging. I am to speak in my capacity as a pioneer Director General of Nigeria's first corporate focal agency on aging and issues of older persons, established by legislation. And it is my pleasure indeed to have this opportunity to share Nigeria's innovative and transformative actions in the midst of multiple challenges. And so I also want to acknowledge everybody that is here, all the stakeholders in aging. It's always a pleasure to be with family, passionate people, pushing for a convention for the rights of older persons. So I acknowledge all of you here. And I do hope that in sharing Nigeria's experience, we will continue to learn from you and then also continue to spotlight what is possible where you have a political commitment. So you permit me to share my slides as I begin to share Nigeria's experience. So the outline for this keynote is going to be first and foremost just a bit about Nigeria's demographic profile of older persons. And then, of course, I will talk to you about the policy and legislative foundations, and then the major structural challenges that we faced as a pioneer agency in aging. And then, of course, the strategic pathways that we tried to find to ensure that we roll out project activities. And then, of course, I'll also share enablers and drivers. What are the things that enable us and what are the things that drive this vision that we have? And so, of course, right now, as I speak, Nigeria has 14.9 older persons living, presently, and then 50.2% are male, 49.8% are female. 5.3 of these 14.9 older persons live in the urban centers, while we have about 70% of those, 9.5 million, in the rural areas. Presently, we have a national database for the poor and vulnerable. So far, 2.5 million older persons have been captured in that national database, from where we have, poor and vulnerable grants distributed. And then as I speak, Nigeria now is rolling out a national identity card for the senior citizens. And so far, 7 million older persons have been enrolled towards the issuance of this national identity card. So with a projected 2.8% growth in the population of older persons, it is projected by 2050, the year 250, 2050, that we will have about 30 million older persons living in Nigeria. At that point also, the median age will shift, because right now we have huge population of the younger age group. And so the median age right now is 17 years, because 0 to 35 years, about 70% of the total population, which now stands projected at 216 million. So there's a projection that by the year 2050, this median age will shift to 36 years. And we'll have about 30 million older persons in Nigeria. And so in Nigeria, older persons are chronologically defined as persons that are 60 years and above, not really 65 years. So within the policy operationalization and all the projects that we are rolling out programs for older persons, persons that are 60 years and above. So now to policy and legislative foundation. Nigeria has the National Senior Citizen Center Act. This act was signed in 2017, but was actually activated and the Senior Citizen Center set up in 2021. So we are just barely 2 years old. This legislation is a landmark and fundamental legislation that brought a shift to the social inclusion of older persons and the visibility of older persons in development plan. Before the setting up of the National Senior Citizen Center, Nigeria really did not have a focus on older people. Issues of older persons were treated as welfare issues and were domiciled in its welfare units in any social development department. So older persons were largely invisible. But this legislation got a shift, a very, very fundamental shift, and older persons were now, integrated into the National Development Plan. I want to say also that Nigeria, for the very first time, also had a national policy on aging. And I want to say that this national policy on aging fundamentally, adopted global frameworks and development agendas. The African Union Policy Framework and Plan of Action on Aging, the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging was clearly one of the main fundamental framework underlining national policy on aging. The Sustainable Development Goals also aligned in the national policy on aging, the WHO Decade of Healthy Aging, and of course, all these points to the fact that issues of aging in Nigeria are development issues, social development issues, not welfare issues. So they are multi-sectoral. I just needed to point that out. And of course, the national policy on aging also intersects in Nigeria and draws from other policies. We have the National Social Protection Policy, which is an overarching policy and relating to programs and projects on social protection for the vulnerable. And older persons, this was recently revised, and older persons are clearly listed as beneficiaries. We have the National Strategic Health Development Plan. For a long time, older persons were not listed, not initiated into this development plan. We also have the National Policy for Persons with Disability. We have National Policy for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons. We have the National Gender Policy. I want to say that in operationalizing programs and projects in the National Senior Citizen Center, all these policies have had the National Senior Citizen Center, really working very hard to ensure that older persons are mainstreamed and in fact central in all these policies. So now, before I can share the innovations, policy innovations, I want to say that there are many challenges. There are many challenges that we faced as the pioneering center for older persons, so that we can appreciate where these strategic pathways and these innovations were issues of navigating the very, very challenging terrain. I really need to tell you about those things that posed a challenge and still pose a challenge. And so somebody has to really be innovative if you really want to operationalize issues of older persons as a development issue, a multi-sectoral issue. And then if we really would reach older persons where they are in the community. One of it is the federal system of government in Nigeria. Nigeria runs a federal system of government, a three-tier federal system. We have the federal government, we have the state, and we have the local government. And the three governments, the state government also has the executive arm, the judiciary, and of course it has the legislative arm. So the fact that the federal government has developed a policy on aging, and the federal government has enacted a legislation, and set up a center, a National Senior Citizen Center for older persons, does not necessarily translate to the fact that the National Senior Citizen Center has unfettered access into the states. Because the states, they run independently. They have their state assembly. They have their executive arm. And whatever is going to operate as law within the state really has to pass through the state assembly. So what that means is that it now is a challenge, and somebody really has to find, mechanisms and procedures to ensure that the states accept the national policy, domesticate the national policy, accept the National Senior Citizen Center Act, and domesticate the act. And then, of course, that way we can easily align the programs and the activities, and then can reach the communities, and then the rural areas where the older persons are. So that's one challenge, and that needed also innovation. How do you reach the older persons? How do you get the states to accept what you're doing? How do you get the actors in the state? What machinery do you put in place to ensure that you can reach the older persons where they are? And then the next challenge that we face, and I mean, that just needed, some innovation, is the pessimistic perception of aging. Ageism. Because for so many years, Nigeria operated, in such a way that older persons were not visible. That pessimistic perception of aging persisted. That older persons, do not really deserve to be invested in. That any investment in issues of older person is a waste of money. That there is no dividend to be gotten from, investment in older persons. And that there was no economic growth opportunities in anything that had to do with aging. And that older persons really, were not contributing, so that the value of older persons was so diminished. So that was another challenge we faced. And then, of course, the linkages and intersections of the mandate of the Senior Citizen Center. Because what's our mandate? Our mandate is that we have to, identify needs of older persons and cater for those needs. We have to, develop programs, health programs, social programs. We have to, develop and initiate work schemes for older persons to continue to make money or supplement income. Engage in capacity enhancement for older persons, sports and recreation, and of course counseling, and then you have research, data, records and statistics of older persons, anything that has to do with development. So the mandate of the senior citizen is huge. And then another problem that we faced was that because this is the pioneer agency, it's a pioneering venture, we did not have concrete procedures and mechanisms and processes, to put up where older persons can be a part of the planning, the implementation, the evaluation, and just general enjoying the center as, their fundamental, center. And then another problem we faced was limited institutional capacity. Capacity in aging administration in the field of aging is really limited. Paucity of data, national data, and then budgetary appropriation, because they have not budgeted for aging before. So they did not understand it. And so these are the strategic things that we faced. So what did we do? What did we do? So first and foremost, we needed to develop a strategic roadmap. We needed to ask ourselves, what are these challenges? How do we, surmount these challenges? What mechanisms and procedures do we need to put in place? And what kind of partnership structures do we have to build? Where do we get the funding? So many questions. So the only way was to articulate a strategic roadmap. So with the stakeholders, the major stakeholders, we came together and we drafted a very, very participatory strategic roadmap on aging. And this roadmap on aging identifies for us all the challenges, identifies for us all the opportunities, identifies for us the strategic pathways, identifies for us the priority areas. What are the priorities? What do you tackle first? Who are your partners? How do you build the structures? How do you get into the states? What's your entry? So this was very strategic for us. So one of the major innovation that we had was the development of this strategic pathway, articulating the critical issues from the National Senior Citizen Center Act, articulating the critical issues from the national policy and other global frameworks, and then telling ourselves, this is the path that we need to take. So from the strategic roadmap, we were able to identify 2 strategic pathways. One was aging mainstreaming. What we need to do for older people already exists. For instance, health programs already exist. It's just that they were left behind. Social programs, there are social programs for other age, population category. Sports and recreation, and name it. All the housing, transportation, they exist. So one way of, meeting our mandate is to ensure that we map all these ministries, agencies, and departments that run statutory mandates on all these development issues and undertake a high-level advocacy visit, sit with them and map exactly what they're doing and what they should be doing for older people, and ensure that we mainstream older people into what is already in existence. So that was one strategic pathway, aging mainstreaming. And then the other strategic pathway that we developed was creating new opportunities. So now this had not existed before. Yes, there are other programs and activities that are running in other ministries, but they did not understand aging. And aging is an emerging issue. And now we have the privilege of having a national senior citizen center. So we need to create new opportunities. We need to develop our own flagship programs. Those 2 strategic pathways are what that we identified. And the next thing that we did was to operationalize the national policy on aging. Take the national policy on aging, break it down into national plan of action on aging, and then project activities. So that we did. We had to identify, what programs we wanted to run. We had to identify justification, objective for it, programs we wanted to run, income security of focus. Under income security, what do? Create new opportunities, initiate work schemes for older people. At the same time, also create social assistance programs, mainstream older people in social safety nets, and then, of course, develop different kinds of economic livelihood, sustainable livelihood, what the older persons are doing already that we ignored all these years, So, and then under health and social care, what are the priorities? Apart from health promotions, mental health promotions, we needed to develop care quality assurance, benchmark statements, minimum standard to train caregivers. We needed to enforce with the partners who are regulatory agencies in Nigeria, national standards. So yes, we needed to do that. So we were able to identify all these programs, then engagement of capacities of older persons. What kind of program can we develop to ensure that our retirees, whether it's from the public sector, whether they are from informal sector, can continue to engage, give them a platform, help them to form themselves into, experience core, brain trust, and then let them continue to engage, develop intergenerational programs, volunteer programs for our older person. And then the next thing we broke down was, how do we build the capacities of government officials? How do we make them understand aging from all the ministries, departments, and agencies? And then, of course, how do we now promote the opportunities in aging? Let them see the National Senior Citizen Center and the investment as that which will create economic growth opportunities. That was very key for us, because the population of the youth is huge. The challenges facing government concerning the youth population, 0 to 35, is huge. And then resources are limited, and government is looking for how do they get money. So we had to position ourselves and then really promote the economic growth opportunities in aging. Any investment, whether it is investing in their vulnerable states for healthcare and the industry of social care, or whether it is building their capacity to continue to contribute. That is how we position the NSCC to promote the continued contributions of older person, and then of course to build, as we are building now, a social care, geriatric social care industry, training caregivers, training care agencies, certifying caregivers, and they're gradually building that industry for better care of older persons. And now government is now keying into it and seeing huge opportunities that older persons will continue to promote. And I have talked about now partnerships. How do we build partnerships? What we did was that we made this a priority. Why? Number one, because as a pioneering agency, and I told you about the federal system of Nigeria, how do we get into the states? Except we build partnerships. How do we, get other agencies of government to know what to do for older people? Except we build partnerships. So this was for us a major key. It was like our breath. So we went on to build partnerships. And as I speak to you now, we have 40 aging desks in 40 MDAs. And we've been able to train aging desk officers. So for instance, you go into the Federal Ministry of Health, for instance, there's aging desk there. We have trained 2 key focal officers that are our liaison inside the Federal Ministry of Health. You go to primary healthcare, the same thing. You go to, what do I name now? Federal Ministry of Housing and Transportation, the same thing. You go to sports, recreation, the same thing. There's hardly any ministry. Go to agriculture, the same thing. There's hardly any ministry that you enter in Nigeria that you not see 2 well-trained middle-level officers in aging and manning aging desk. And they're not just aging desk officers. They are persons that we have trained. We have developed a framework. We have, equipped them with tools. In fact, we are still working to equip them with tools for them to know exactly what it is, how they recognize a program, how they sit with us in a technical working group to now design that program the way it will, it will suit the aging population, and to develop the key performance indicators, and to develop monitoring and evaluation, frameworks. So this is what we've done. So in each ministry that is very important to us, we have these desk officers who are working as though they are staff of the agency, but actually they are staff of the ministry. And now, coming to programs that we have developed, key for us is income security programs. So what we did was, like I said, either we are mainstreaming into what is already in existence, or we are developing new programs. So when it comes to mainstreaming, we now searched out ministries and departments and agencies that already were running income security programs, employment programs. I give you an example. The National Directorate of Employment. They run huge programs, giving out a loan scheme, sometimes grants, but older persons were never part of it. So what we did was that we developed a partnership. We sat with them, mapped all their programs, identified all those programs that they needed to mainstream older people. And for the first time in this country, older persons were giving loans and grants because we were able to identify older persons that were doing things on a subsistence level that needed. So that's one way of mainstreaming. We're also able to mainstream older people into vulnerable and poor, grants for vulnerable and poor people. We identified the ministry in charge and we told them, look, give us a percentage. We're always negotiating for percentages. So that's what we have been able to do. Mainstream older people into income security programs. Now there is a small and medium enterprises development agency of Nigeria. It's a huge agency. And all they do is build capacity, form cooperatives, give grants, arrange third-party financing for entrepreneurs. So now for the first time, we have partnership and they are now mainstreamed older people. So what new opportunities did we create? This I'm telling you about mainstreaming. Now, we just looked and said, so what is it? What are the livelihood ventures of older people? We discovered that most of our older people in the rural areas are into crafts, arts and crafts, indigenous craft, very beautiful things. And so what did we do? We did a national assessment. in partnership with this NDE, all these agencies I've told you about, we had a national assessment. The entire Nigeria, we covered it, identifying older people, identifying the crafts, indigenous craft in their specific states, and then assessing all these crafts. In fact, what you see on your screen is the book that we are publishing. Is a book that we are publishing. That we are publishing on indigenous crafts. Indigenous craft and crafts. This is what we are publishing. Having done the national assessment, and we're able to identify older people whose capacity that we built. We selected them from across the country, and they were able to build their capacity. This was a pilot we were running, and then of course, gave them grants and loans, and now we are clustering them into multi-purpose cooperatives. And so that was a new, the flagship program that we developed. And older persons, we did a monitoring and evaluation. We integrated the stakeholders into it, and that we're able to do. Another flagship program that we developed under income security was the one we call the Grandmothers Arise for Good. Grandmothers Arise for Good is a program that promotes the productive activities of older women in rural communities. And most of them are artisans, are small-scale farmers. So what we did was we found a way to be innovative about land tenure that denies women land, especially older women. So we were able to make it community-focused. We developed a cooperative. It's called Grandmothers Arise for Good, multi-purpose cooperative. We're able to work with the community to get the community to now lease land to the cooperative. And then women, 60% of cooperative members are women, 40% men. And so now the pilot that we are running on 21.6 hectares of land, and they are planting their indigenous crops, cowpea, maize, and groundnuts. And then we have signed agreement with the off-takers, private sector, develop all this into value chains, and we are also, promoting their markets. But what is innovative about this program, apart from now being senior citizen focused but community centered, is that we made it we made it sector-wide. We are in this community, but we brought in WHO. WHO, the climate change intervention, aspects of WHO. Now, from this land, 1.6 hectares is now for nursery. So these older women and men are now developing economic trees that they will now plant, to intervene in climate change. And then we also brought in water and sanitation agency, training them to stop open defecation, building toilets. Now, older persons are trained as sanitary agents. And of course, we just also brought in the primary healthcare and then the health insurance. So the Grandmothers Arise and these cooperatives that we want to roll out across the country is one program that we have developed into a social enterprise that not only is promoting productive activity, but is also bringing social and healthcare services. So that's one innovation. And I've talked about the social safety net. And then I've also told you about the development of care quality assurance, because before now, there was nothing like that. Care was just care. Anybody could enter and care, and that is what is happening. And then we had agencies also developing their own curriculum and just training the best way they could just to fill in the gaps. But now the National Senior Citizen Center is now rolling out national benchmark because we want to enforce, working with the regulatory agency, the care quality systems. We are very supported by United Nations Division of UNDESA is supporting this. helping us to bring in international consultants to help us to roll out these things. Then another flagship is a continuing engagement I talked about. Now we have developed online portals, a mechanism for promoting employment opportunities for older persons. There's also the portal on the same web for agencies, organizations who will require the services of older persons. NSCC is helping to facilitate job creation partnerships, and then the older persons will be, encouraged to enter into labor market agreements. We really emphasize age-friendly environments, and of course, on the terms of the older persons. And this is creating a lot of excitement, and we are also developing application apps that we can put on Google Drive and all that, because we have many, senior citizens that have retired, most of them professionals. They have been here and that are diplomats in the armed forces, well-trained, and all that was going to waste. So NSCC is mobilizing all that on this platform, the continuing engagement platform that connects senior citizens to where they would wish to donate their skills and competencies, or where they want to work for supplemental income. And then another flagship program, mainstreaming and flagship as well, is the issuance of identity cards for our senior citizens. Nigeria is already rolling out the national ID cards for all its citizens, but the senior citizens, during our first maiden dialogue, asked that they be given a special identity card so that they can have dignified services wherever they go, priority access, and that card can also serve, as for multi-purposes. And the Federal Executive Council approved that. And so we are working on that with banks. It's going to be a multi-purpose card, and this card is going to be social safety net based. This card is going to be priority access based, and this card is going to also provide opportunities for dignified services in public spaces. We have gone very far, and our banks are funding that. And that was the Federal Executive Council directive, that banks can fund that. It will save both as a national identity card, as a debit card, and then as multi-purpose access. And NSCC now is mounting campaigns to get discounts from vendor associations, to get, for instance, aviation, railways, some road transportation, pharmaceuticals. We are really everywhere working to be able to get those discounts that card can be applied for. And of course, this year, provisions has been made for us to partner with private sector to now build our senior centers. There's an initiative that we call One Community, One Senior Center. UNDESA worked with us, that was last year, to identify models of senior centers. And now they are coming back in August to help us to develop standard operational manuals, and then of course, policy guidelines. And we have several models of senior. Why are we doing this? Because we want to be able to guide private sector operators who want to build senior centers. And it's also an opportunity for us to develop the framework for accessing, for standardizing, monitoring and evaluating that. So this is on. One Community, One Senior Citizen Center is on. One project that is very dear to our hearts is the Elder Justice Campaign. Of course, it is common knowledge that elder abuse is rife, not only rife in Africa. Nigeria has its fair share, but violence, where you have accusations of witchcraft practices, has been very, very troubling for us as not only as human beings, but also as persons that they have committed this mandate to protect senior citizens, ensure that they are secured, they are happy, they are safe, and to stop abuse. So what we have done is that we have developed very structured partnerships with agencies that were inexistent, old agencies that have systems and mechanisms in place that before now did not include older people. We have the VAP law, Violence Against Older Persons Prohibition Act, which protects everybody, but older persons were not mainstreamed in its operationalization. And we have the National Human Rights Commission. We have the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria providing pro bono services, access to justice for other population groups. And of course, we have the National Orientation Agency, mounting national campaigns to reorient citizenry in any subject matter at all of importance. So what we did was to form partnership with these agencies. And the NAPTIP, that is the National Agency for the Prohibition of trafficking of persons, and then to stop violence also, we have developed very strong partnership. Now, because they are a very huge agency, they have the facilities and the systems. Number one, they have call centers, and they have toll-free call lines. And then, of course, they have a squad, protection officers trained. And then they are present in 27 states out of the 37 states of the Federation. So their systems are there. The National Human Rights Commission has a system across this country. Legal Aid Council of Nigeria has systems across this country. So we took advantage of all that. And now we have developed such strong partnerships that we now have their call centers. Our call center has become the call center for older people. And then their call lines we have deployed. So we are mounting serious campaigns. And that has already started yielding fruits. Wherever any older person is touched and that line goes up, before you open your eyes, you have the protection officers. They are both rescue remedy squads, and they have the prosecutory mandates. So straight to court, they prosecute until they get justice for older people. And the Legal Aid Council also provides, legal services free of charge for older people. So now, apart from all that, we have started mounting the Elder Justice Campaign. And as you see in that photograph, those are school children. We are forming Elder Justice clubs in secondary schools. And we have school children mounting debates. They have Elder Justice Challenge, telling us why older persons must live dignified. When we had the weird June 15th, where we had that challenge, secondary schools had the challenge. And that picture, they showed the school that, they won. So NSCC is working with partners to build network support campaigns and machinery for intervention, rescue, remedy, and prosecution. And then we are making it known to everybody that elder abuse is multifaceted. Not one person can stop elder abuse. Is national. It calls for national action. It calls for collective action, and then I think that is gaining traction. That is gaining traction in news stations. I've already talked about that, and all that. So perception of aging. Now, that is where we are fighting very hard, mounting intergenerational.
Dr. Emem, can I just interrupt for a minute? We're getting very close to the end of our session, and I don't know how much more. It's just so interesting, but there's so many questions in the chat. How can we accommodate both?
No, this is the end. I'm just rounding up now. Okay. So I'm done. I just wanted to say that we have the things that enable us, and those things that are enabling us are what I have just told you, campaigns to remove all the structural resistance and barriers across the MDAs and to change, the minds of people and to make them see the opportunities in aging. There's a huge industry. And when we put our older people to work, it will be the better of Nigeria. So thank you very much. Thank you, Maura. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe we can go back now to stop sharing and see all the beautiful people here on the screen. Thank you very much, Emem, for this really breathtaking presentation. I want to just pull out a few things that stood out for me, and maybe then we can go back to the questions. The last slide is also what you started with, what enables us and what drives us. And it really sounds like the essence of this initiative of leveraging what we're already doing, how can we leverage it, what older persons are already doing for themselves, because we know they're very resourceful, and how can we help it and connect between this and policies. How to introduce the language of aging into policies, how to finally, and congratulations for doing it, making policymakers understand what is aging, because until you get there, it's really hard to experience it. And also, by doing all this, expanding all these service offers to the entire lifespan from childhood to older adulthood, and making sure that everybody gets the recognition and the services that they need. So these are a few things that stood out for me. And I would like to just go to a few questions. Oh, we have so many questions in the chat. Mm-hmm. One would be that there are a couple of questions about the desks in various agencies, and maybe you can provide us with some links so people can read more about this. It sounds, it echoes something that we've been advocating here, is introduce the language and the actions of aging into anything, because it really crosses all categories, no matter where you look, whether it's disability, women, whatever. We all get older. This is the only constant there, no matter what your particular context. So that would be great if we can have some references that people can go to. The first question here was from Tom McCormick. He's saying, you mentioned ageism, and I assumed that traditional cultures in Nigeria had a high value of honoring and caring for the elderly. Was my assumption wrong? What has been changed? So maybe you can address that for a couple minutes. And we can...
Yeah, so much has changed. So much has changed, I tell you, the systems, you know. Yes, we pride ourselves in Africa, really, and that is the norm, that is the standard, that we have respect for older people. Yes, we do, we have respect for older people. But I don't want to pinpoint to anything that's changed, but I know that ageism is rife. And it's at different levels. You have the interpersonal level, older person, in fact, intergenerational, it's like there's a war between generations. And the younger ones think that the older ones are stealing time and stealing work. Should you even want to invest in older people and giving them a chance to continue to contribute? And the older people think they don't understand this generation anymore. So there's ageism, but the one that bothers me and that we are really fighting for against is a systemic institutional ageism, where you had for a long time where, you know, issues of older persons were not included in the National Development Plan. And when we talk about elder abuse, we talk about when you neglect to do, when you don't take action where you should. And so, yes, ageism is still rife when it comes to development issues. Older persons are not seen as worth being invested in. And then, of course, ageism, that's what leads to abuse. Older persons are looked as witches and wizards. Why? Because they are old and wrinkled. So yes, Africa is not, we have that standard, yes, but in practice, older persons are really, really being discriminated against. There's neglect of older persons. So yes, unfortunately, so in Africa.
I have a question because we're talking about aging, and during our various conversations here in 50/50, we learned from our pioneers in many different countries that there is a mandatory retirement age, and in Africa, and I think we have Malebo, I think, was requested to retire at 60, and she rebelled and won. 60, now that the life expectancy is longer, 60 may not be as old age as it used to be. And at what point does old age start in Nigeria, from your experience, in the law and in society?
The mandatory retirement age in Nigeria for most public servants is 60 years. But you have, for persons in the judiciary, the judges are 70 years, and then of course the academia. Once you become a professor in any field at all, is 70 years. Otherwise, every other person, once you hit 60, you retire. So the national policy on aging recognizes 60 years as for older persons, defines older persons 60 years. However, the National Senior Citizen Center Act said 70. And so what we did was, so somebody retires at 60 and hangs in limbo, waiting for 10 years to enjoy, the services and the programs that are meant for retirees or older persons in whatever category. So when we operationalized our policy and developed our programs, we made it inclusive. Once you're retired 60 years, on and on. And then, so yes, 60 years.
It's not calibrated properly.
Yes.
You
so
have 10 years of limbo where
that.
You can still be starting another business or something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Still, and even at 70, getting close to it myself, I can see like, no, 70 is still very young. Avinash, maybe you can take yourself off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, the question actually I asked to Dr. Emem, as everybody will aware about that, in the past we had that the same question I asked to her during our IFA conference about the senior exchange program within the developing countries. Now here, most of the people I found that the guys are from USA or Canada, you are all developed countries. But developing countries, elders' problems are a little bit different. They are not digitally expert. They are not, there are various problems. So if we have some senior exchange program, so few seniors from the national level people, those who can visit to other countries, their people can come to India, and the national policies or the seniors, this government look towards the seniors, this points can be exchanged, and a common base program can be laid down, or a common base policy can be laid down.
Yeah, thank you very much. We don't have that at all. That is one area that I would really love for you to talk more on. Senior exchange program, you said?
Yes. So
Fantastic.
last time we talked about this Nigeria, India, Japan. Then we had another country from this Doha. We talk about in our IFA conference at Istanbul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
yeah, I recall.
So I will appreciate if you can take up this point, because I find that you are moving a lot in most of the countries, even though UN also. We got this UN special consultative status, all India. I'm now chairman for the research committee. So we can find out certain program, and we can have this research also, and then we can compile this each nation, and we found out which nation is leading, or whether we can take out some certain things. So this is just my basic idea to you.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that is what Moira would love to take on and guide us on that.
Moira,
Senior exchange. I can see Moira smiling already. They are smiling.
Moira, she's from France.
I
Jan is
love
from US. Jan is from US. So these people are from the developed country. Their problems are different. Our developing country problems are different. Main thing is finance.
Yes. So Mara, over to
Please
you.
don't forget I'm from South Africa.
Let us know when you're ready. We are ready. Thank you, Advanish. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jeff Rubin, do you want to speak up?
Yes, I just an observation from what Dr. Omokaro was saying earlier about data collection and the need for sufficient information. Take, for example, elder abuse. Here in this country, in the U.S., we've only recently begun to record ages when it comes to elder abuse. And so we're underestimating the number of cases that we have, and therefore it could be much higher than what we currently know. And I'm assuming it's probably the same thing where you are. And therefore, in terms of evaluating the resources and the needs to address them, where we may be underestimating. And I would look at this from the standpoint of more, which reinforces more of the need for engagement of elders in service to community. And looking at this from the standpoint of the value of elders to the economy, looking at it as a cost benefit. We're investing in programs that over time will save money, not cost money. So I would look at it from that perspective. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. And indeed, we have experienced in these parts that indeed cases of abuse are underreported. And why I say so emphatically is that even when we get the squad, the protection officers to these homes where these elders are abused, you see the entire community rallying around to plead. You see the families rallying around to protect the abuser because they look at it as a family issue. And also the family is going to solve that. So yes, so you can imagine those ones that are going underreported or not reported at all. So the ones that are reported and you send in the squad to remedy and rescue, you see the family, trying to plead that, oh, it's family matter, family is going to settle that. So you can imagine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to just loop it back to the United Nations effort. You have prominent involvement there and also prominent involvement as a representative of the biggest representative of Africa. And it looks like in Nigeria, based on what you have presented to us today, you have already identified and acted on many of the gaps that we're still trying to get the member states to recognize. How do you see your efforts dovetailing with what is happening in the Convention for the Rights of Older Adults?
I would say that last year saw, was it this year or last year? This year, yeah, saw the 4th revision of MIPA. And that MIPA provided, first and foremost, the national platform for national review. And then after that, we had the regional review of MIPA. And of course, as a region, all of us came to the conclusion, and I think I represented African region, and I said this out at the United Nations when we had the social development conference, and then we had the celebration of the 20 years of MIPA. With one voice, Africa said that MIPA, yes, is a very, very necessary instrument for guiding policy. But MIPA is not strong enough to compel actions to strengthen the protection of the rights of older people. And I think this was reiterated during the open-ended working group on aging. Because you would see that a few people who oppose, who are not supportive of the UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, you find that they always use MIPA as well. We have MIPA as an instrument to go ahead and adopt MIPA and so on and so forth. But everybody said, yeah, nothing wrong with MIPA. MIPA is good. As a matter of fact, Nigerian policy, I said, this has been guided by MIPA. However, it is until Nigeria had the legislation, MIPA was just there. So Nigeria, we fully understand that from our experience. And then Nigeria is very, very equivocal in the support of the UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. As you indicated earlier when you introduced me, Nigeria is now chairing the African group. It is in the Bureau and really working very hard to ensure that African member states really come forth and be supportive of what the process and to also speed up the process. So yes, we are just barely 2 years. What we have tried to do is to lay the sustainable and very enduring foundations. And to do that, you need the legislation to build the systems and to build the institutions. And so that when you operationalize the policy, I give you an example now. Nigeria was only able to include the issues of older persons in the National Development Plan. Why? Because of the legislation. And for the first time, issues of older persons was included in the budget, the national budget. Why? Because there was a legislation. Yeah. And we're able to develop programs, defend programs. The audacity that we have to approach the ministries, departments, and agencies to tell them, look, mainstream older people. Why? Because we are an agency, you know, by legislation. So where you do not have legislation that compel the duty bearers, I'm sorry, that policy will not do. So that is where we stand, and our experience, not our experience in terms of we have closed the gaps. No, we are just starting. We have not closed all the gaps. But our experience in the fact of the force of the law, we have experienced that, what legislation can do. And so you can imagine a UN convention. Now, we'll be able to define who an older person is. We'll be able to, you know, define the scope of the rights of older people. We'll be able to, you know, compel a lot of things. And so there's no compromise there. And Nigeria now with the National Senior Citizen Center has experienced that. And so you can imagine having a UN convention on the right, a universal binding instrument where we all can have standards from. So yes, that's so.
I think so. Yes, is probably the most definitive, conclusion here. Yes to everything. Yes to all the contradictory questions because we know. We are just 1 minute away from official closing time, and we're going to keep the call open for another 15 minutes. But right now, before I pass it on to Moira to say parting official words, I encourage you to look at the chat. We always like to hear from you. We always like to hear how you experienced this session, what you'd like to hear in future sessions. And there's a feedback link there. So please click on it even today, because if you don't, you probably won't click on it ever. We are going to send toward the end of the week highlights from today's session, plus a link to the YouTube channel recording of this session, and all kinds of links and the chat transcript. So please watch your mail, and that's it. And I see Jan is waving her hand.
I just wanted to have Margaret or Emem tell us the meaning of MIPA, because I think a lot of people don't understand MIPA.
I'm sure Margaret would love to do that. Margaret
had to leave for another commitment.
Oh, okay.
So it's left to you.
Yeah. The Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging. That's it's a very beautiful document, really. When you're looking at aging as a multi-sectoral, a social development issue, that's the first time with that document that aging was now integrated with economics. Aging was integrated with health. Aging was integrated with social issues. Aging was integrated with transportation, housing, everything. Now, the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging really has those three pillars that tells you integrate older people and development. You can't have development here and have older people the other way. Mainstream them into development. And it's that document that tells you so on and so forth about healthy aging, advancing into old age, with health. The same document that tells you about age-friendly, enabling, supportive environment. Right. So that is that document. And it has been reviewed over and over. We just had the 4th review. And if that document, and I think somebody wrote here that when we had that anniversary, they talked about MIPA not having a strategic roadmap to implementation. Maybe they are thinking about MIPA 2, MIPA 0.20 ahead, where they would develop a strategic roadmap to navigating all these things and making it intersectoral with the linkages. And also, we need the UN Convention to back MIPA.
Right.
So that's
we're talking about the Madrid International Plan that actually started out in 2002, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
And has been reviewed several times since then and updated. Yes. Good. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay. So, Moira, last few words, and we close formally and then continue as if nothing happened.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm just so very thrilled to have listened to you, Emem. I think you're going to lead Africa and you're going to show the rest of the world. And I think if MIPA's doing and wanting to find a new MIPA 2, I think you should be in there and write the strategy. I said, no, a very serious comment here. I've heard wherever I go to Europe with Age Platform and everywhere else, and we all talk about mainstreaming aging, but I've never heard such a clear and concrete and practical way that you've gone about it. And just imagine if every country were to do that and have 2 trained people on an age desk in all the ministries. I've never heard anything so practical and doable. And I think you have been a total inspiration to all of us, and you've certainly fired me up. And we're going to continue following you and being inspired by you, because you've put your finger on the hot spot, and that is we as older people still have so much energy and things that we can do. And it's only by standing up ourselves and doing these things and voicing our opinions that we are really going to advance. And the way we can do that is by sticking together, changing and exchanging and passing on what works for the one and the other. So I'm going to formally thank you so much, Emem. Really, it's been a wonderful session. And I look forward now to a free, open discussion between anybody who wants to talk now for the next 15 or so minutes. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for you're always so generous with your compliments. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so formal is done. And now anybody who wants to speak and ask questions and make comments and insights and whatever, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about this desk operators, what Dr. Emem mentioned. They are working at the ministry level or along with the ministers. Who these people are? Are they from the seniors or from the government side? What is the function and how is this all the things goes on?
Okay, so now I said earlier that
Yeah, that's okay.
That the mandate of many ministries should include services or programs for older people. But over the years, it never happened because of ageism and so on. So when we came on board, we now looked at the mandate of every ministry, their policy, their strategic documents, their programs, implementation plans, and all that. And we identified that, look, older people have been left out. And so we approached their ministers, some of them their director generals, if they are agencies, to say, now we're on board, now we are established by law, now this is our mandate to identify needs of senior citizens and to cater for the needs. And one of the areas we identified is in your ministry, it's your mandate. And we have identified all these programs that you have that should also include older people, but look at the gaps. So we want to work with you by setting up a technical group so that we can identify where it is that you should fit in older people, how we can negotiate, advocate and negotiate. So one of the things we negotiated was, okay, now give us 2 persons and we are going to train these people in aging, train them and help them to develop programs, train and retrain. And we are going to work with these people to now develop implementation plan, to develop key performance indicators. We will work with them to ensure that you understand issues of aging from the standpoint of your own statutory mandate. So that's what we did. And we told them, please give us middle-level officers who will be there for at least the next 3 years. Don't give us any senior officer that's going to be retired. And so they did. And we were able to do this progressively. Now we're in 40 ministries, agencies, and departments, having trained officers. Now we have a platform with all these officers. We just finished retraining them on our strategic roadmap and then our national plan of action on aging. And now we developed and gave them a template where they can go and map those programs, or if they see any new program that older persons should be mainstreamed. So they have now become our liaison officers in their ministries. If we are doing anything, they are part of what we are doing. So they are learning along and they are very excited because we have been able to show them this is your future. So that is what these aging desk officers are. You know, they are civil servants, they are government officials within different ministries and agencies who know the mandate of their ministries, who we have now taught about older people, to look out for older people in their ministries. Now, on the other hand, we have the stakeholders consultative forum. I forgot to mention that. These are 9 categories of stakeholders that we worked closely together to develop a strategic roadmap, a national plan of action on aging, and that we are now using and integrating into all planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation. Who are these people? You know, Association of Older Persons Association. That's one category. Union of Pensioners, experts in aging, like gerontology, geriatrics, any expert, nursing, adult education, and then civil society organizations, community-based, faith-based civil society organizations. Elders Council, as traditional institutions, representation from traditional institutions. Persons, academia, and research. We have them, we have private sector. So we have them. And so we have these categories of stakeholders, which we have mobilized in every state and given them a governance structure. So everything that remember I told you that Nigeria runs a federal system. We have federal government, we have state government, we have local government. So how do we get to the state government? Each state has this consultative forum, aging consultative forum made up of these categories. They are the ones we use to advocate to the governors. They are the ones working with their state assemblies to fight to domesticate the National Senior Citizen Center Act. since we do not have the budget yet to build offices in the state, so we are using human capital to run. So we have the aging desk officers, we have the stakeholders consultative forum in the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to hear about these desk officers. By the way, just one small thing only. Now, do you have separate ministry for these senior people's problems? Do you have separate ministry for their social justice?
If we have a separate ministry for senior citizens?
Social justice?
No, there's no separate ministry. We have a Ministry of Justice.
Okay.
We have the National Human Rights Commission. Okay. So we are the ones now clustering all these thematic, agencies to focus them on elder justice.
Okay, thank you.
There's no separate ministry. We are the only focal agency on aging, all aspects of aging.
Yeah. Okay.
So we don't have it. Yeah, thank you.
May I speak now?
Go ahead, Valerie.
Hi. When I heard that you were going to be speaking today, I hadn't heard of you. And so I did some Googling to find out what you were doing. And I thought, this is a lady that I need to meet. I founded Learn with Grandma partly to address the respect problem. We older people were always respected in the old days because we had knowledge and skills that we could pass on to the next generation. What has happened, of course, is that we've had this wonderful tool which we're using now. The internet did not exist. When I was 60, a little before that, my son said to me, "Mum, you're going to have email." "Oh, I don't need email, I can write a letter." And he said, "Mum, it's free and it gets there like that." I thought, that is handy. Now here we are, 20 odd years later. I put in the chat that I'm now 82. We can talk to each other directly through the ether and it costs nothing. We are talking now in this wonderful way. I've tried and failed technology today because I wanted to send you a personal message and I couldn't understand how to do it. So it's gone into the chat. But in this message, I've given you my email address and I need to get in touch with you because Learn with Grandma has a group in Nigeria and all that you are doing, you can also promote via Learn with Grandma. Learn with Grandma's role is to promote intergenerational learning, but also it is about promoting active aging. The longer you keep dancing, the longer you keep singing, the longer you keep on being active physically and mentally, the longer life you'll have and the more fun you'll have too. I love my life. As I say, I was 82 on the 4th of July. My dad used to say, Valerie was born independent. I will stay independent for as long as possible. So please, I hope that, I can't read her name properly, but Moira knows about me very well. I've spoken in UNESCO 3 times, slept on her sofa in her flat, and we've had some fun together too. But I would love to speak with you and to hold a Zoom for Nigerian people so that you have an opportunity to do what you've done today for the people in Nigeria.
Okay.
We'll do it
welcome
together.
that. Thank you so much.
Lovely to meet you. And to the gentleman in India who's been talking, there is a Learn with Grandma group for India too. So I hope you'll join that one. There are 51 groups around the world.
Fantastic.
So I will say bye-bye now. And love to Moira, love to Jan, love to everybody. And we'll keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely to meet. I've agreed with everything you say, apart from one thing. Printing that book will prove to be a mistake. A printed book is out of date the moment it is printed. We've now got a new program on how to create ebooks. Ebooks can be added to every day. Every time you see a new project, you can add it to the ebook, and the cost is 0.
Yeah, we are doing both. You need to print for the library. We are doing both.
I used to write educational books. I've got a load downstairs if you want some. You can send a book anywhere in the world at a click.
Yeah, Valerie, I know. You know that this belongs to government. It has to be in the government library. So it's both and then the hard copy as well.
Well,
so
I don't have to do that because I'm not in the government. With our government, I wouldn't want to be. Good night, everybody. Lovely
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Lovely
Bye.
to see you, Moira. Bye now.
Okay, ma'am.
Time to leave you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye. I've finished. It was really good to see you again after such a long time.
Yeah, after a long time.
So please let's take Moira on the Senior Citizens Exchange Program.
Yeah. Please,
well, I'm very happy to have a meeting and to decide to see what exactly it entails.
That would be fantastic. Let's dig into it and see.
We can just start with the baby pilot project.
Exactly.
Okay,
so
Moira,
thank you so much, Moira. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Margaret is already gone.
Jan should be there, I think. Bye-bye, Jan.
I think Jan has left us.
Left.
Yes.
Okay.
But, whoever is here are the right people. So we're basically at the end of this great session. I'm sure we could stay here all day, all night. Not quite practical for some, but we should do it again in a year and see what has changed.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful idea, Osna. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Book you again for July 2024.
Yeah, Moira.
Bye.
Moira, I got a request.
Yes.
For
Bye, everybody.
this our program. Can you